everyone, and a very good morning or a good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from today. I'm Tarun Nagpal, your host for the day and the director of Global Tech Nexus, which is a publication, a tech community for technology leaders, and also the organizer of Tech Excellence digital sessions. On behalf of our partner Infobip, we would like to extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you to the digital session today, which is focused on sending emails at scale and avoiding common mistakes to increase revenue. And this session is powered by none other than Infobip. They are a global leader specialized in omni-channel communication, simplifying how brands connect and engage with their customers. Most of us here today are well aware of various struggles and complexities of email setup for sending high volumes of emails that often ends up with poor delivery rates. Yes, this is something to be concerned about, but don't worry, you are not alone. Many businesses face similar challenges, and to help us through this, today we'll be joined by Infobip's email product managers and deliverability experts who will share insights and real world cases from large scale senders. They will be sharing with us a blueprint to a tech setup that is capable of achieving deliverability rates of 99% and above, along with success stories and proven strategies from 2024. By end of this session, you will be equipped with knowledge and strategies to send emails at scale. We will also have a dedicated Q&A session towards the end, but feel free to type in your questions through the Q&A tab present on your screen. And we will be joined by three highly experienced experts who will lead us through this session today. Gajendra Rawat, who is a product sales lead email at Infobip, an experienced CX and client success professional in CPaaS and SaaS domains, and a passionate email enabler and strategist. Next in line would be John Burke. He is the email product manager at Infobip. He comes with 12 plus years experience in email deliverability and developing effective email strategies for enterprise level companies, tech startups, and SMBs. And to get us started with the first session, we have with us Antonio Boras, Product Success Manager at Infobip. He is a tech strategist for Infobip Email API, helping companies find best email solutions and achieve their desired results. So let's get started. I would request the audience to take notes, ask questions on regular intervals. Please do type in your key concerns or questions or challenges that you face with email setups. We will be answering all of these questions towards the end of the session. With this, I'd like to welcome our first speaker. Over to you, Antonio.
Great. Thanks, Tarun. Thanks for the introduction. Just give me a second to start sharing the screen. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen now and everything is looking nice. So yeah, as Tarun said, I am a bit on the strategy and the business side. So my part of this presentation is mostly going to be about presenting Infobip, who we are, what we do, and to sort of like set out like complete layout for this presentation, and just to give you a context about what kind of challenges or problems we saw that our customers are facing. So about the Infobip, we have started almost 20 years ago as an SMS provider. And as we progressed on multiple markets all around the world with SMS, we saw that we have to include other channels. We started with MMS, voice, USSD. Then as OTT applications such as WhatsApp, they started to increase their popularity, we also included them. And then 3-4 years ago, we also saw that email is still good potential. Even though like email is considered to be like an, let's say, relatively old channel, we still see like an excellent return on investment as a channel itself, because it can get you to a lot of audience with not such a high price, meaning that return on investment is going to be good. Now, as I said, 3 or 4 years ago, we have started to focus it a bit more, and we started to develop our own infrastructure. Now, when it comes to the infrastructure itself, first, like that's the foundation. If you do not have like a good enough infrastructure for sending emails, and especially if you do not have like a global infrastructure, the overall performance of email is not going to be good. The infrastructure which we have built, you can see it on this slide. Now, this map shows 8 data centers, and those 8 data centers are full email data center, meaning that in those data centers, we are both processing and storing the data. However, Infobip being a global company, we have much more data centers. I think that we have more than 70 of them. The other ones are behaving, let's say, as a proxy data center, meaning that we're only using it for processing the data. Of course, when we see some local regulations being changed, we are fully up to date, and we are deploying full data centers. Now, to be more specific about our infrastructure, we can process more than 1.8 million emails per minute. We see that our average delivery rates for majority of our clients is 99.4%. In this presentation, Gajendra will give you a bit more details about how customers actually achieved it, which use cases they used, and their delivery rate which they achieved. We are also super proud to say that our average delivery time for transactional emails is 2 seconds. Of course, for marketing emails, it's going to be something higher because they're bigger in size. As I said, 8 dedicated email data centers, and we have more than 1,000 customers that are using our email daily. Now, I did mention that infrastructure is the foundation of everything. And one thing that you have to understand nowadays that it's not only about sending emails, it's more about like actually delivering emails in the inbox. And here at Infobip, this is the division which you're trying to make. Everybody can send email, but not everybody can deliver those emails. And this is the part that we want to focus on. And the majority of this presentation is going to be focused on actually delivering those emails into the right inbox. We saw that around 35% of senders face low delivery rates due to incorrect email setup. And of course, creating emails using the email editor or setting the API, that's just one part. That's the fundamental, the infrastructure part. But having like doing everything step by step and listening to your email provider, this is something that is crucial. And especially part about deliverability part which cannot really be set up in like a document, which then you can just read and understand, because you really have to like communicate with different mailbox providers to fully understand what is happening behind that. Just to give like a brief introduction before we talk more about your challenges and your problems, these are the 5 most common mistakes that we saw our customers make. So first one is not enough dedicated IPs for the email volume. If you're using shared IP, there are chances that somebody else is going to impact that IP reputation, meaning that you're also going to be impacted. Then we saw lack of authentication. We're all aware that in February, both Gmail and Yahoo put a mandate on having the key and DMARC being as a mandatory stuff in the when you're like doing the DNS record and domain registration. Then not monitoring the reputation. Now this part, it can either be offset to a customer to have their internal deliverability team, or it can be offset to email service providers such as Infobip. And this is where Infobip really excels, like the clear communication with clear understanding for both technical and business personas about how you can actually fix that. Then weak infrastructure for reliable deliverability. If you're a global provider and you're sending just from one data center, for example, a really nice case would be if you're like in India and sending in United States, it's really desirable that your email service provider has both data centers in India and United States. And then by far the biggest step that we saw where our customers are potentially failing, let's call it like that, it's ignoring warm-up. Warm-up is everything. You really have to establish the positive relationship with email providers or mailbox providers so that they can trust you that you're not sending spam. And this is something that often our customers are ignoring because they're used to like an SMS way. You integrate, you blast millions of emails. And in all other channels, it's similar like that. But with email, you have mailbox providers which they really don't want their end users to receive spam emails. So you have to prove yourself that you're not a spam sender. Now, these 5 steps, they're leading to low delivery rates, which at the end are leading to low email return on investment. Before we get into, let's say, more details about how to properly set up everything, which will be led by Jon. We're going to have like a small pool so that you can vote on the challenges that you experienced or the problems which you have experienced. So, Anjali, I'd like to kindly ask you to start the poll so that our attendees on this webinar can actually answer it. And of course, if you have some specific problems, you can type it in the chat. I'm pretty sure that we're going to answer it as soon as possible. I'll stop sharing my screen. We have like a minute or two to go to the poll, and then it's Jon, our product manager. Okay, Jon, I think that you can take it now. It's been like a minute or two. I think that we have enough answers in the poll. So yeah, let's get started with those technical details.
Okay. Hi everyone. Give me 1 minute. I'll set up my screen share as well. Okay, so we wanted to talk a little bit about the core things that you, as a sender of emails, as a sender of big volumes of emails, have to look out for. We're starting with the basics here, but don't worry, we'll get into more advanced stuff later. First things first, let's talk a little bit about setup and warm up. So when you're sending bulk email, when you're sending lots of marketing emails or even lots of transactional emails, doesn't really matter what type of email it is. If it's lots of email, you have to do a proper setup and a proper warm up. So the first thing I recommend that you do when you need to send a lot of email is that you do a little bit of digging into the two types of sender addresses that exist within an email. So everybody knows the from address, right? The sender address. This is the visible address that you see when you see an email, right? For example, on the screenshot here, you can see an example. The from address here is dnews.ufs.com. That's the from address. However, emails have two sender addresses. The second one is what in nerdy language is called the envelope address. This envelope address is not visible. You do not see this envelope address. So for example, I'm trying to show it here and I hope it's readable or visible at least. There is an envelope address EU LON 188, whatever, right? This is the second sender address. Now, if you send a lot of emails, high volumes, I highly recommend that you use different envelope addresses for different use cases in your email. That you use a different envelope address for your marketing email and a different one for your transactional email. And maybe if you have some other type of email, use another envelope address for that. Again, that does not mean that the visible from address has to change. We're talking about this hidden from address here, the envelope from address. Second point I highly recommend is that you make sure these two stay aligned, meaning that the domain that is used in your envelope from address aligns with what is used as the domain in your visible from address. So actually, on this screenshot here, that's not well done. It's badly done because there's no alignment. Use completely different domains. But I highly recommend, and it's good for your deliverability, that you use the same domain or a subdomain of the main domain in your two from addresses, in your two sender addresses. That's the first thing. A little bit technical and hopefully not too confusing, but if it is a bit confusing, look up these two terms, envelope versus header from address, and do a bit of digging. It can really, really benefit you if you send high volumes. The next tip, let's talk a little bit about IPs, IP addresses. So when you send emails, those emails are sent from a server, and that server has a certain IP that it uses to send those emails from, right? That IP address can be either dedicated or shared. And it is sometimes better to have a dedicated IP, sometimes better to have a shared IP. Now, when you send high volumes, it's generally better to have dedicated IPs if you send a lot of volume. Okay, so let's Let's see why. So when you have a dedicated IP, because you're the only one using that IP, you do not share any reputation that is attached to that IP with anyone else, right? So let's say you are Coca-Cola, you're sending from your IP, you don't share that IP with Pepsi-Cola. So any of the things that Pepsi-Cola does will not affect your IP reputation. Okay, so that's good. You stay 100% in control of your IP reputation. It is better if you have a dedicated IP. It is better for your SPF record because you can have a smaller SPF record. We'll see SPF record again a little bit further in the presentation, but this is an authentication record. This is, you can see this as your passport for emails, and it proves your identity. Now, the smaller your SPF record, the better. And a small SPF record means that it has IPs that are not being used by a lot of senders. So this is, again, this isn't something you can do as a big volume sender. And finally, when you have dedicated IPs, it's easier to get them delisted from block lists should they get listed on a block list. Again, because you are the only user, you can fix the issue much easier than if it is being used by multiple senders. The disadvantages of dedicated IPs are that they require a warm-up, right? You are the only one sending from them. Nobody else is warming them up for you. And they require consistent and sufficient volume. But typically for a high volume sender, that is not a real problem. Yeah, what do we mean in the context of dedicated IPs with a high volume sender, right? How much volume do you need to be sending? Let's say 5,000 emails a day, something like that, then you are typically good to go. It's enough volume to get reputation going into a dedicated or multiple dedicated IPs. So the action that I want you to take away from this, it's written here at the bottom of the slide, but review your volumes, review your and review if it would be beneficial for you to have dedicated IPs, or if perhaps it would be better for you to have shared IPs if you're sending small volumes. But have a look at that. It can greatly affect your deliverability. So authentication. Authentication is a third important part of the setup. When you send emails, you need to authenticate, which means you need to prove the authenticity, the identity of the emails. Now, in the world of email, we have three mechanisms that are very, very common, called SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. I won't go into too much detail here, but you can see them all as adding authenticity, adding security to your emails. Now, if you make sure that your emails are more secure, it is always beneficial for your deliverability as well. Basically, security and deliverability go hand in hand. That's how you have to see it. And the more secure your emails are, the more easy it is for a Gmail and a Microsoft and a Yahoo to trust that they can put your emails in the inbox without doing any harm to the end user, right? So therefore, make your emails as secure as possible. It will boost your inbox rates and will boost your email ROI because you're giving that extra confidence to the mailbox provider. So have all of these in place. Make sure that you follow all of them. And then very, very quickly, let's talk a little bit about warm-up. So in email, you have to prove that you are a good sender as well to the mailbox providers. They don't just trust any sender that they've never seen before. Okay, so to prove yourself as being a good sender, you have to go through a process that is called the warm-up. Now, this warm-up is needed every time that you want to start sending from a new domain or from a new IP, and you want to start sending bulk volumes, let's say. So not like 10 emails, right? Not your company emails, not your personal emails, but you want to start sending bulk volumes in the form of marketing or transactional emails, and doing that through a new domain and or IP address. Okay. Now, in that case, if that is where you are at, you have to follow a warm-up plan typically. A warm-up plan typically prescribes how much volume you can send each day. It will look something like on day 1, send 1,000 emails, on day 2, 1,200, 1,500, whatever, right? But there's a certain increasing volume that you are allowed to send every day during a warm-up. That's what everybody knows about warm-up typically. However, more important in a warm-up is that you do this first thing here. Send your top content, your best content, and focus on the most engaged recipients. Actually, show yourself on your best behavior. Like, show yourself the best you can be as a sender of emails to the mailbox providers, right? And if you do that, you will build up your reputation in the best possible way, and your warm-up will be the most trouble-free possible if you do this. A few more tips for Gmail specifically, because we all send a lot of emails to Gmail. Start very slowly. That's the way the warm-up works with Gmail. Every mailbox provider is a little bit unique in the way that they want a warm-up to be done with them. So for Gmail, it is important that you start very slowly. Slowly, we mean typically only a few hundred emails on the first day, right? Even a little bit less, probably. Okay, so be very, very careful there. With Microsoft, be very patient. Microsoft needs a long time to start trusting new senders. So if you don't immediately see the same open rates that you're used to or the same delivery rates that you're used to, be patient. It's how things typically work with Microsoft, and it's to be expected. Right? Gmail and other mailbox providers will typically give you the same delivery rates and open rates as you would normally have, much faster than Microsoft will. Okay, so some tips there, and yeah, a few more hacks. I guess you can call them hacks for Gmail. So this start very, very slowly tip. It's true, but you can kind of work around Gmail's slow startup by sending on an hourly basis to Gmail. Instead of typically a warm-up is on day 1, send this much email, on day 2, that much email, and that stays true. But for Gmail, you can actually, instead of sending 100 emails on day 1, you can send 100 emails on the first hour, and then maybe 100 emails again on the second hour, and then maybe 130 emails. So email, you can warm up faster in a way, despite the slow start that they require, by sending hourly instead of daily. And then another tip, and this is honestly, this is probably much more impactful. If you're switching providers, email providers, from one provider to another, hopefully Infobip, but if you're switching providers, try to do your warm-up with your new provider while you are still at the old provider. It will make your life so much easier. And yeah, because you can send all your traffic that you need from your old provider, except the volume that you need to do for the warm-up with the new provider. So it makes things a lot easier. I highly recommend doing that. Talk very quickly about reputation management. So you've done your warm-up, you've built yourself a good reputation with the mailbox providers. How do you keep an eye on that reputation? How do you know that your reputation stays good, right? So highly recommend that you look at traffic stats. Traffic stats are your send volume, your delivery rates, your soft bounces, and your hard bounces. And here are some benchmarks. They're good benchmarks. Maybe write them down. And make sure that your campaigns, your emails that you send out meet these benchmarks. If not, go digging a little bit. There's something fishy going on, right? So keep an eye on traffic data. Engagement data is a little bit more tricky. Engagement data is the opens and the clicks. Especially opens are a little bit unreliable in email. Emails are being cached. There are bots opening emails. There are bots clicking on links. Like, this data is is tricky to use. Okay, so it doesn't mean you should completely ignore this data, but view it in context. View it, let's say, together with the traffic data, together with the suppression data. So if, for example, you see a low open rate, have a look at your traffic data. Maybe you see something that could explain that low open rate, right? Maybe you see a lot of soft bounces. Typically, the soft bounces could be an indicator of something going wrong, and that could also be an explanation for the open rate. So use engagement data, but use it with a pinch of salt. And suppression data, these are your unsubscribes and spam complaints as well. Again, like the spam complaints especially could be harmful for your delivery reputation. So make sure that you that you don't get a lot of them. Google and Yahoo have launched a requirement. We'll talk in a little bit more detail about that later in the presentation, but their requirement is that your spam complaints stay under 0.3%. Okay, just to give you a number, something to shoot for. Okay, inbox placement, reputation, and block lists are some additional metrics. These are metrics that you typically have to go find somewhere else than with your email solution because they do not exist within an email solution. But they're useful. Obviously, inbox placement is a useful metric. It shows how many emails, of all the emails that you sent, landed in inboxes. So this is really something that as an email marketer, you should keep an eye on, and you should drill down in this. How many emails for Gmail? How many emails for Microsoft? How many emails for this campaign? How many emails for that campaign, right? So do some analysis on your inbox placement if you can get that data. Your reputation, this is something that you should not have any excuse for not measuring this. Google especially has a very good free tool that allows you to monitor your reputation for your IPs and your domains. Again, it's free, and it's something that every marketer should be keeping an eye on. So yeah, use Google's tool. It's called Google Postmaster. The other mailbox providers also have tools, but first of all, they're not as good, and typically Google is fairly representative of how your reputation will be because the majority of your traffic typically goes to Gmail, right? Or at least 50-60%. That's something that we typically see these days in email audiences. Finally, block lists. So block lists are lists of IPs and domains that have been seen as sending bad emails or spammy emails or doing something wrong. Now you want to be sure that you, even if you're a good email sender, that you're not ending up on that list. Maybe if a mistake you made, right? So keep an eye on these lists. Again, there are some tools that you can use to monitor these. There are paid ones, there are free ones. This one is free, for example. So I highly recommend that from time to time you do a block list check and make sure that you're not listed on any of the important block lists. All right, now let's talk a little bit specifically about high volumes because it's the topic of this presentation, right? Sending at scale. So what do we mean with high volumes? I've been mentioning high volumes through this presentation. What do we actually mean with high volumes? So these are stats from actually one of our customers, right? An actual customer. And this is email traffic. This goes over our network. You can see that this customer sends a lot of emails, right? Like over 100 emails is not a very rare thing. We see this fairly regularly. In addition, in this particular case, these emails fly across the world. They're being submitted on one end of the world. You need to be delivered on the other side of the world. Like it's very, very complex. So we have some mechanisms in place to be able to handle this kind of traffic, these kind of volumes, right? And so I wanted to give you some tips. What I believe the core pieces that you need to find in your email solution to make sure that if you're sending high volumes as well, that your email solution can keep up, right? Load balancing. So we're starting with maybe another a groundbreaking one, but very important one nevertheless. It's called load balancing. So load balancing means if there's a lot of loads, meaning a lot of email traffic in this context, how do we divide that, spread that evenly to make sure that none of the parts of the email product gets overloaded, right? Gets crashes. So you need to make sure that your email solution has advanced load balancing in place in various aspects of the product. So, for example, APIs. If, for example, your email solution has APIs and has an API endpoint, what happens if that one API endpoint gets overloaded, right? So ideally, there is some kind of load balancing mechanism that makes sure that an API endpoint can never be overloaded and that load is spread across various servers by a load balancer for the API. The same with the MTA. MTA stands for mail transfer agent, but it basically means a server that is very, very good at sending lots of emails. And so inside your email solution, there will be MTAs. These are the servers that specifically are specifically focused on sending out the emails. These again can get overloaded, and so it's important that you have load balancing in place here. And now a tricky one, the trickier one within email is IPs. So if you're sending a lot of emails, it's highly recommended that you use dedicated IPs, as we talked about, but multiple of them, not a single IP, right? Now you need to have some kind of mechanism to make sure that your traffic is spread across those IPs. It can be evenly spread, but it can be even more advanced, right? You can think about what if a data center goes down, right? What if a server goes down? Are all those IPs in the same server? Then you have a problem, right? You need to have IPs in different places and load balance across those different places, those different locations. What if one of the IPs ends up on a block list, right? And you shouldn't send emails through that one IP, right? So IPs are a little bit more complex when it comes to load balancing, but it's nevertheless very important. For you, the user of an email solution, it's important that you ask these questions, that you check, do we have this load balancing in place across the core parts of our email solution? Queuing as well. So if you send a lot of emails and they need to be sent out, there's typically a queue that sits between you and the server sending out the emails. Now, there can be one queue, there can be multiple queues. It's important if you send a lot of emails that you have multiple queues. One queue will create problems. So the way we do it, and we see that as a very performant way of doing it at Infobip, is that we have separate queues per sender. So each of our senders will have their own queue, and per MX. Per MX, the MX is basically the server of the mailbox provider. So let's say the Gmail mail server or the Hotmail mail server, right? Or the Yahoo one. So we will have a queue for sender 1 to the Gmail server, for sender 2, for sender 1 to the Hotmail server, for sender 1 to the Yahoo server. So by having a lot of queues in parallel, we avoid stoppages, blockages, traffic jams, so to speak. And especially because in email, it can happen that a mailbox provider intentionally slows you down, right? Maybe Hotmail doesn't like a word in your content, or you put too many exclamation marks in the subject line, slows you down intentionally. Now, by having parallel queues, Hotmail's behavior, slowing you down, does not affect your traffic to other mailbox providers, right? So it's important if you send high volumes, especially, it's important that you have something like this in place and that you look for this in your email solution. DC location, so where you're sending from and where you're storing your data is again important. This becomes more important as you're sending higher volumes. So if you're located here, let's say you're located in Southeast Asia, and the server that is sending out your emails is, let's say, located in North America, your traffic first has to travel all across the globe, right? And then maybe you're sending to recipients in Southeast Asia. So the emails have to go all the way back again. So all of this causes delays. So that is one of the reasons that you have to make sure that you have to look into the location of the sending infrastructure and where the data is stored. Other reasons are data protection laws, of course, especially personal data such as email addresses, names, can't be stored anywhere in the world. You have to look into this in accordance with the data protection laws that apply. The more distance that emails have to travel, the higher the chances of something going wrong, right? Maybe some boat hits a cable in the middle of the ocean and the internet gets a wobble, and some of the emails get lost. Now, if your emails don't have to travel as far, there's less chance of those kind of hiccups happening. So that's another reason. And then finally, it does happen in email. There are some markets where basically it is beneficial to send from an IP that is close by. So for example, China is a very good example. In China, if you're sending from a Chinese IP to a Chinese email user, your traffic will be treated differently than if you're sending from, let's say, an American IP, right? Or a European IP. So depending on where you need to send to, it is also important that your IP and your email infrastructure is in a certain location. So look into that. Again, the more volume you send, the more important this is. And then disaster recovery. So disasters happen, right? They're not always tornadoes. It can be something as silly as someone unplugging the plug of a server in a data center, right? But things break from time to time. They break, and so when you're sending a lot of emails, it is important that you have what we call disaster recovery in place. That there's a mechanism in place that if some server breaks down, you have a backup. You have a backup plan. Okay. And yeah, so the areas where this is important, your API endpoints should have a backup. Your IPs should have a backup. Again, IPs are complex here because IPs need to stay active for a certain amount of time to have a reputation. If they are pure backup IPs, meaning they never actually send anything, they're just there as a backup. And then one day you actually need them, right? Some disaster happens. Your backup IPs will not be warm, will not have any reputation. So that's something to think about as well. So your disaster recovery for your IPs needs to make sure that those backup IPs somehow stay warm, right? Stay with a good reputation. Make sure your suppression data stays available. Suppression data, what I mean here is spam complaint data or unsubscribed data. If somehow that goes down and you are sending to people who have unsubscribed, this could be problematic, right? And then, yeah, some other parts of the email as well. So make sure that if you have an email solution that there is disaster recovery in place, and especially for core parts like the ones mentioned here. How are we doing on time? Quick look. To hurry up a little bit. Talk about deliverability trends. So recent changes in the email deliverability world. You may have seen this or you may not have seen this, but it is a fact nevertheless. Gmail has started to deactivate and close inactive accounts. With inactive accounts, they mean accounts that have not done anything in terms of engaging with the account for the last 2 years, right? So if you have accounts like that in your email list, let's say users who you didn't see any activity from, you didn't see them opening anything, you didn't see them clicking on anything, and especially if they're Gmail users, think twice about sending to them, right? It could be that they are inactive accounts, that Gmail has deleted them, right? And if you would send to them, it would not look good for you as a sender. Like, it would basically result in bounces. So yeah, shy away from sending to such inactive addresses. Google and Yahoo have some requirements, some new requirements, although they're not super duper new. They were rolled out in the beginning of this year. But to very quickly recap them, you must have a DMARC record in place. So we talked about the authentication records, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. For Gmail and for Yahoo, you must have a DMARC record in place. This wasn't the case before, but now it is. You must offer users a way to unsubscribe with a single click, and your complaint rate must stay under 0.3%. Okay, so these are the requirements for Yahoo and Google. And also, by the way, you can monitor your complaint rates in Google Postmaster, which we already mentioned before. But so Google Postmaster is a free tool from Google where you can monitor your reputation. You can also monitor your spam complaint rate and a few other useful bits. More new stuff. Google is working on a Google Postmaster V2, so a new version of the tool. And you can try that. You can already check it out. It is not a replacement of the existing tool. It has some different focus, and it's actually more focused on checking that you as a sender are compliant with the requirements that Gmail and Yahoo here have imposed. So you can use this tool to check that. Yahoo is also working on a tool, but right now I don't think it's super useful for end users or senders of emails, because right now it only really focuses on managing your feedback loops. Oops, sorry. And this is my last slide of my part of the presentation. However, I was asked to tell you that now another poll is coming up, I think. Okay. You see my screen good?
Yeah, I do see your screen.
All right. Let's get going.
Right. Thanks, John, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are enjoying the webinar. I'm sure you have some takeaways from the learning shared by Antonio and Jon. I'll just share some of the case studies that we have, some quick cases wherein we understood some problems, identified the gaps, and basis the gaps we read through well, and basis that we shared some of the solutions, and fortunately we got good results. It'll be my pleasure to share all the results with all of you. Jan, could you please flip over to the next slide, please? Right. So this the first case study come from global retail company. This is one of the premier brands called Costco. Comes from the North American Europe region. So the basic challenge, and I think all the challenges which were shared, which I'm sharing now, relatively talks about the problems and the solutions which Jan has shared just a while ago. So the major challenge, wherein, the transactional emails were not getting delivered on time. And we all know how critical the transactional emails are. That has to be right on time, must go to every single user, because this has more reputation than any other email channel. And I'm talking about promotion email. So we were getting poor acceptance rates, especially with the Spectrum email recipients. There were throttling issues and low delivery rates. So any emails which is being sent has to be delivered 100%. And if it is not getting delivered, then it is another challenge. But if it is getting delivered and not getting delivered in the right inbox, then there is a problem. So how do we define that? We first of all understood, what is the problem. So there were two reasons primarily. We found that there is a ISP connection limits, wherein the major chunk was coming from Gmail, and Gmail was scrutinizing the data, understanding that not releasing the email or not delivering the email as per the real threshold, and that is where the major problem were. This happened primarily because of other reasons as well, but the main contributor was high bounce rates, wherein uh, you know somehow we felt that customers not sending emails to the solicited basis, and invalid email addresses were there in that list, and due to which the problems were happening. So what we did, we immediately implemented parallel connections, and we ensured that throttling is happening at a certain rate. What Jan has explained a while ago, that Gmail has to go at a certain speed, per hourly speed. We kept monitoring it, understanding the trend. We communicated with the ISPs, and when I say ISP, it is more towards Hotmail and Microsoft. When we have certain connects, wherein we tell them, okay, this is the legitimate sender, these are the fix that we have done from our end. That's how we ensure that the relay speed is being managed. We also ensured that we read the entire RC. We did the entire RC and found that there are certain gaps that we need to fill in. We spoke with the clients, understood their data accumulation methodologies, helped them understand that how critical is to know your data. What are the active, what are inactive, what are your lapsed users? Challenge them, and always ensure that we are targeting the most recent ones. Focus on your on the engagement. So if your engagement rates are stronger, your sender score will be better. Your sender scores will be better. You'll have better domain and IP reputation. That's how your inbox placement will go even better than before. So that's how it works. Right. So with this, we were able to achieve 99.2% delivery rate, and the bounce rate, which were critically high, went low as 0.8%, which was extremely good. And I'm glad to inform you this account is doing wonderful at the moment, and we have in fact sharing some of the best practices from this account to other accounts as well. So that's case number one. Moving on to the case number two. Jan, can you please help me? Right. So this is leading financial services, and this is one of the premier clients coming from APAC Vietnam region called SSI Securities. We all know how critical is the market when it comes to BFSI sector, especially the financial services. And so they did the critical, that baseline mistake wherein, we found that the single domain is being used for multiple vendors. And that is where we found that this is the problem. So we figured out, what are the major problems. So the major problems were performance degrading. Emails were getting delivered, but again, they were getting delivered in spam. So we found out, we suggested them that we need to go for a rewarm up plan once again. So we had to restart all over once again. For that, we scrutinized the data, filtered out the most active data for us, and started warm up. Slowly and gradually, we moved to we completed the warm up. The repetition came down to medium, which is excellent in any term right now. Now, what happens? Any problem of such nature may reoccur or relapse once again. So for that, our team is really diligently follow every single mechanism wherein we define the problem, we measure, we analyze, improve, and then control. And for that, our deliverability team is on the job all the time for premier clients, ensuring that they monitor closely, they give the right set of guidance, right set of advices or the recommendations to the clients, and then it helps us managing this spam rate. So the domain reputation in this case got medium, and this account is doing wonderful as we speak right now. Moving on to the next slide. Right, this is one of the largest customers we have, and this is one of the e-commerce players in APAC region. The client is Shein. So they have a certain kind of problem wherein high over quota bounces were impacting their delivery rate. So basically, they're sending everything at a one go, right? So we need to ensure that not everything must go at a single point, right? We need to ensure that it is going in the intervals, it is gathering some tractions from their users, their the engagement rates are better, and that's how we need to release the traffic. That's how. I think first we need to understand is that we had to work on their suppression system, which means wherever we saw that the email addresses which were marked as spam or part completely made their temporary suppression email box, so that email is only going to the solicited base. One. Second is that we ensured that the hard bounces were kept aloof, so this data was crisp and clear and ready to shoot. That's how we manage the first situation. Now, since it is a premier client, and Jan also mentioned so as Antonio that any to go out, it is always advisable that we need to have dedicated IP address. That is the first thing that we explain to the client. We allocated 10 additional different dedicated IP addresses. With these IP addresses, we segregated the volumes and mitigated their relay speed, which means every IP is throttling at a certain rate with certain numbers. That's how we kept on monitoring, and this presented a wonderful result for us. This actually helped us get the best delivery rates for 99.5%, but the best win in this case was the bounce rate, which came down as low as 0.5%. So I'll conclude in 2-3 ways. I mean, it is email is like a very effort kind of product, wherein you'll have to invest some time in the beginning. You'll have to get the basics right. If your basics are right, you're well known to your data. You ensure that you're sending it to the right users. You ensure that you're taking the data with consent from the customer. Hey, I'm going to send you an email, and it is a legitimate source that we are following. I'm pretty sure that there is no way that email can land in any other folder other than inbox. So it is as simple as this. Wherever we have large volumes, ensure that we are segregating our time. We should have a marketing calendar. We understand, okay, these are the 5 things that we need to do, and as per it, we need to send it to most active users. We need to send it to the right users who have given us a go ahead that I want an email from your end. So if you have less complaints, better tractions, you'll have a better sender score. Better sender score improves your overall deliverability rates. So these are the major 3 wins that we have. But as we are evolving in the market, I'm sure we'll have more use cases, and I'm sure that this presentation would help you gaining some knowledge about email challenges and how to mitigate them. This is it from my end. Thank you. Over to you, Tarun.
Great. So I'd like to thank Gajendra, Jon, and Antonio for sharing with us those enriching insights and the right approach to sending emails at scale and leveraging the potential of emails by maximizing its delivery and the recommended blueprint or a roadmap to get most out of it. So I would now like to open the session for Q&A and let the audience ask questions from our experts. I do notice some questions have come in on the chat box already, but I would encourage the audience to type in questions as we address some of the questions that are already asked. So the first question that I would like to read out to our panelists. I would request our experts from Infobip to take up questions either in sequence or as relevant to each one of you based on your expertise. So the first question would be what actions we should take if we get the low reputation for IP while sending it to certain domains to increase our reputation.
Yeah, I'll take that one. But it's a bit like asking your doctor, what should I eat if I feel pain? The doctor will ask a lot more questions, and we'll need a lot more information on what you have been doing in order to diagnose you. It's the same in email. So if you have a low IP reputation, you can see that as a symptom. It's like you have to try to figure out what the cause is to know which actions you should undertake, right? A good place to start would be looking at your bounce messages. So the soft bounces that we've been talking about and the hard bounces we've been talking about, they come with a message, and that message sometimes, not always, but sometimes contains some valuable information, such as your content looks suspicious, or you're sending emails that are too large, or you're sending to a lot of people who are marking your emails as spam, or you're sending very big volume spikes, so those bounce messages are very valuable. Use them and check if you see anything there that could guide you to what you're doing wrong and what you need to fix. Other than that, I would highly recommend, if you don't see anything there, check out the Infobip blog. We have a very good article with all the best practices that you need to follow in order to to keep a good reputation or to fix reputation issues.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Jon. So since that question is answered, Gajendra, Antonio, would you like to go after the same question, or should I switch to the next one? Next?
Yeah, we can switch to the next one.
Cool.
Yeah.
What steps should I take to start the email warm-up process for new IP or domain? This is the second question.
Yeah, so I'll take this one as well, right, guys? So it's kind of the setup and warm-up section that we talked about, right? So you need to set up your domain to send. You need to decide the right IP setup, dedicated IPs, shared IPs, and then you need to do a warm-up. And for that warm-up, you need to keep in mind the volume limitations that the mailbox providers will impose on you. So prepare for that by building a warm-up plan or asking your email solution to provide you with a warm-up plan, and then build the content for your warm-up and execute your warm-up plan. So again, it's just proving yourself as a good sender to the mailbox providers. That's what you're doing in that process. So make sure that everything that you need to do to prove yourself as a good sender has been done, right? Make sure that all of those best practices that you need to follow are in place, okay? And that's what you need to do for the warm-up.
Great. So we have another question from Tirumalai, and he's asking, who are the major players in the market who are keeping this reputation checks? Do you work with them directly?
I wanted to answer this one because this is a very common question in email, and it's also a bit confusing. So do we work with them directly? Yes and no. So depending on the mailbox provider, they will be more or less open to communication. So typically, the smaller the mailbox provider, the more willing they're to communicate. Whereas, for example, Gmail, you can imagine Gmail gets billions of emails in a day, right? They don't keep up with communication. To be frank about it. So it's very dependent on which mailbox provider we're talking about. So that's the communication part, or that's do we work with them directly? But who is keeping this reputation? That's a really good question. Every mailbox provider, again, is keeping their own reputation. So you as a sender do not have one reputation. You have one reputation with Gmail. You have one reputation with Microsoft, and one with Yahoo, and one with Apple, right? And your reputation can be very different from one mailbox provider to the other. So it's important that you keep that in mind, that you look at your results per mailbox provider. Because if you just look at the overall result, my delivery rate is 97%, we're all good. You might miss the fact that actually your delivery rate is maybe 99% at Gmail, maybe 50% at Apple, right? If you're not sending a lot of traffic to Apple. So keep that in mind. Your reputation is kept by each mailbox provider separately. And it's important for you as a sender to therefore analyze your results and monitor your reputation per mailbox provider.
Great. Thanks for that response. And Tirumalai again has a follow-up question. I understand the need of dedicated IPs. At the same time, This will lead to increased maintenance cost from procuring the IP, maintenance, etc. Your thoughts on this?
Well, typically you pay for dedicated IPs, yes. So they come at a cost. I do not know what costs Thermala is facing for them, but in my experience, the costs usually are not that high. Let's say 30, 40, $50 a month for a dedicated IP. So let's say as a big volume sender, you need to have a few dedicated IPs, 4 or 5. You'll have a cost of something like €200 a month or $200 a month, something like that. Other than that, there is not much maintenance to dedicated IPs. You buy them and you have to keep their reputation. So you need to send traffic through them, but that's about it.
Super.
Yeah.
So I guess
Yeah,
Gajendra wants to give a go at it.
Yeah, I'll just add what Jan said. It's I think Tirumala, it's not about the cost. It is about the investment. When you're sending out emails that to of a high nature, which can yield you better business. I think with set of shared pool of IP address, you may you may are at a risk, right? Because somebody's action can actually destroy your own reputation, and that way you may lose your chance. So that's how, if you are sending big, and if you have a bigger marketing plan and your marketing budget is set for email, especially for that cost, I think it is an investment. So don't take it that way that it's a cost here.
Great. And then we have a question from Giri. What is the recovery percentage to recall the message if there is a false information on broadcast email message?
I
So-
don't know the answer.
Yeah, let me try to give an answer on this one. So, in terms of percentages, I don't think that we have that numbers or we know it from our hand. We can probably get those. But when it comes to our strategy behind those, depending on the bounce rate or the bounce error message that we get, Infobip is either going to retry the message. For example, if it's like a soft bounce, then we're going to retry the message. However, it's feel like a hard bounce, then we're not going to retry the message. So Infobip does have a strategy when it comes to, let's say, false messages, but it really depends on what mailbox providers communicate to us. So it's really, I would say it goes case by case. But for this, we would really have to like either get our numbers to see the recovery percentage, or have more details about the question in general. So I hope I at least gave a direction of an answer, if not the correct answer.
Super. And then we have Mary Joy Reese asking, how much is the cost per length per character in email blast?
Yeah, we don't charge that per length of character. We charge per submitted request. So as long as you're submitting requests, Infobip is going to charge that. There are some best practices when it comes to like how long the email should be, the subject line should be, but we're not going to charge more if it's like a longer subject line, if it's like a longer email. This of course translates if you send like a bigger email with more kilobytes, more megabytes, we're not going to charge that additionally. So it's per submitted request.
Great. And then we have another question. In fact, this could also come across as a request. Would you have any playbook or promotional emails for e-commerce in terms of subject line length, subject line tone, best email template type, multiple redirection link versus single redirection link, ideal frequency to reach out to each customer in a month, etc.?
Yeah, so we do have something similar. Since we are still, let's say, more on the technical side, focusing on the technical side and how to do the proper integration and how to properly communicate with mailbox providers, we do have an ebook about that. However, this ebook does connect to, let's say, more of a like a marketing play, which is mentioned in this question slash request. So I would say that yes, we do have something that we can offer here. We are going to share the link to this ebook that we are offering. It's relatively fresh. I think it's like 2 or 3 weeks the ebook was published, so it's relatively fresh. There's a lot of information, but have in mind that it's a bit more on the technical side than on the purely marketing side.
Thank you for that. And then I guess this would be the last question, unless our audience has any more questions to ask. So yeah, I guess there's more questions coming up. Yeah. So would you, how can we reduce the time taken to establish a connection to the next hop or destination server, or decrease the total delay for a delivery?
By using Infobip to send your emails. I mean, this person sounds like he's managing his own email infrastructure. And yeah, this is a little bit too technical, I think, for this session. Maybe look into why you're having delays posed on you by the destination server. They might give a reason for it. I'm not sure, to be honest. So
Sure. So we'll switch over to the next one. I guess this would be the last one. How many sub-users can we add to a main user for email blast sending using Infobip?
So I'm not sure if Jon or Gajendra, you know the answer about how many sub users can we add to the main account, but I would say that
I think it's more about the reseller panel.
yeah, but
That's white label panel. Yeah, maybe you can talk about that.
I mean, I don't know the exact number, but it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. So I think that we have it covered. I don't think that we ever had an issue that one reseller added too many users and then that we blocked them. So I wouldn't take that as any like concern or anything like that.
Great. So we also had 2 poll questions. Is there something y'all would talk a little about those poll questions as well, based on the results we got? I suppose y'all should have the screenshots, or it's displaying on the screen right now.
Yeah, Jon, if you could comment a bit more about some strategies or just overall how to avoid emails landing in spam folders, because this is, let's say, the most common challenge our customers or attendees of this webinar are facing. So just a bit more about that, because I think that there are some like best practices which can be implemented.
yeah, it's very interesting for me to see, right? Because I'm a product manager, so it's good to see what the main concerns and issues are. That being said, this is kind of what I expected to see. Marketers need to know, or anyone sending their emails need to know that their emails are landing in inboxes, and emails not a good channel for that. It's not feeding that information back to users. If you are concerned about your emails landing in spam or not landing in inbox, like it's usually something that you see through the low open rates anyway, right? That's probably why you have low open rates, and then you need to start looking into what is causing that. So again, there's a billion different potential causes for this. I talked about this in my presentation. So open rates are your engagement data, right? Take these with a grain of salt, but don't ignore them. And instead of looking at them in an isolated way, look at them together with your traffic data and together with your suppression data. If you see low open rates, it's probably indeed the case that your emails are landing in spam, right? But look into your traffic data for more explanation. Maybe see sub bounces or hard bounces. Maybe see high complaint rates in your suppression data, right? So take a holistic view, right? To use a fancy word. That will give you the best idea of why your emails have low open rates and why they are landing in spam. Also, again, it's hard to know if your emails are actually landing in spam or in inbox. There are some tools out there, some third-party tools that can give you an idea if your emails are landing in inboxes or not. They have different methodologies and different costs, but if you're really concerned about this, this could be a good solution. So look into them.
Great. And then would you also like to talk a little about the second poll? Can we switch to the results of the second poll?
Good. So these are required, guys. You have to follow these if you are sending emails to Gmail and Yahoo. And I'm fairly sure if you're sending emails to Gmail. So you have to have these in place. Talk to your email solution for help with them if you need help with them. They're not too difficult, they're not too complex, not too technical to implement. So talk to your email solution if you need help with them. Okay. So
all right, great. So I guess we are done with all the Q&A, the Q&A session as well as the polls, responding to the highlights about the polls. So with this, I would like to thank our panelists, our speakers for joining us. So thank you once again, Jon, Gajendra, Antonio, for that enriching session and on helping us with the right approach to sending emails at scale. I'm sure this will help our audience today to maximize their delivery rates, and also, we would be encouraging our attendees to now scan the QR code present there. This is your one-time opportunity, a complimentary one-to-one consultation session with our Infobip experts. So I would recommend and I would request our audience to immediately scan the QR code on the screen. This will help you identify your email gaps and get an action plan from our Infobip delivery engineers. So please do utilize this opportunity and go ahead and fill in the consultation form. And with this, we'll be ending the session for today. The slide will remain there for the next 5 minutes. Feel free to have a quick scan and fill in the form. And our experts from Infobip will be connecting with you shortly. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining us today. It was lovely having you all online with us. Thank you.